is a practice that has helped me realize that I may not be perfect, but I am still, and I cried saying this last weekend. I said, like, I am a good deal. Like, after all, I am a good deal. Yeah. I am a great person. And that's something I need to remind myself of every day. You look like you're in a good mood.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just woke up and I was like, this is exciting. It's our 10th episode. How can I not be excited?
Right. Well, for me, I think this episode is going to be like therapy. It's been quite a few weeks, so we're just letting it out in the 10th episode.
Gonna blab it out.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I think that's the point, right? We're being honest. Like,
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever we're going through in life, we're just sharing it with the world.
Yeah. It's out there.
Yeah.
We're not private anymore. We're public figures.
No. Mm-hmm. As we talked about in the last episode, just the two of us, we're basically influencers and
literally.
You know, my fans.
We're wearing Aquaphor, both of us. You know, just the regular.
Our official sponsor.
So, are you ready, pal, to dive in?
I am. I'm excited for this one.
Okay, cool. So, hello everyone. I'm Nat, and welcome back to the Goal Get Her podcast. We're just two friends with the goal of bringing women together, no matter where you are, for real, relatable career conversations. Today, we're tackling a topic that I think so many of us can relate to: perfectionism. This is so scary. You know, that little voice that tells you everything that has to be just right before you can move forward. Well, we're here to tell you perfectionism is out and progress is in. We're diving into why embracing progress over perfection can actually help you thrive, both personally and professionally. Are you ready, pal?
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. And really quick, I just wanted to say, I think I just said this in the intro as well, but happy 10th episode, everybody. Sadly, Aquaphor did not reach out to sponsor this one, but maybe the 20th episode.
Maybe. Hey, we can dream, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So, pal, why is perfectionism so tempting yet so toxic?
Yeah, I think perfectionism is just so toxic because it kind of tricks us into thinking that if we get everything exactly right, we'll avoid failure and criticism and disappointment. It kind of feels like almost a safety net. Like if we can control every little detail, then everything will turn out perfectly. But I think in reality, perfectionism is actually one of like the biggest things holding us back. Instead of helping us, it kind of keeps us stuck in a cycle of overthinking and procrastinating and never feeling like our work is quote unquote good enough to put out into the world, which is definitely something that I think I have struggled with in the past. And I think we can almost set impossible standards for ourselves. When we don't meet them, it feels like we've failed, even if what we did accomplish was actually pretty amazing and we should be celebrating it. It makes us like scared to take risks and scared to show up before we are ready or feel like we're ready. And it can scare us out of putting ideas out into the world because we think it isn't perfect. Obviously, I think you can tell that like I'm speaking from experience. This is something I have definitely gone through firsthand. When I was first starting my freelance company, Graceful Media, I delayed launching it for way too long because I kept convincing myself that my website wasn't ready. And Nat, you can contest to this because I probably redesigned that website 100 times, and I think you saw like every single version. Mm-hmm. And I just like couldn't stop tweaking every detail, changing all the wording, switching up the colors. I was like obsessed with just changing it until I thought it was perfect. And one day I was like, okay, this is good. Like, I'm not a web designer. So I just had to sit myself down and be like, this is the best I can do. I don't want to pay for a professional web designer at this moment in time. So this has to be perfect in my mind. But I still find myself so it is live right now, but I still find myself falling back into that cycle. And even just yesterday, I spent like 4 hours redesigning my website all over again. So I'm probably not like a model for perfectionism because I think I've definitely still struggled with it. But I think the one thing I want to like get out there in the world is something that I've been trying to almost convinced myself to believe is that perfectionism really isn't about excellence. It's really about fear, about the fear of what people will think about your work. And when we chase perfectionism, we end up sacrificing progress. I didn't put that website out there for months on end, and that meant, I didn't get any clients for months on end. So, and then the second I put out the website, I have a few clients now. So and the website still isn't perfect. I know that, but just putting something out there that might be messy. It might be not the way you envisioned it, but you can always come back to it in the future, and you will learn along the way, and your ideas might adapt along the way too. So sorry, I'm rambling, but that's kind of my 2 cents on it. And I think it's the waiting until things are just right that can really get us kind of stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. This reminds me of right before our first episode was out, I was so nervous because it's like, I think we both face this perfectionism issue with the podcast. It's like we prepare for months, and we still change stuff on socials. We still we change the way we scripted stuff from the first episode to the second to the third because we are learning through like doing the actual podcast. So I remember I was so nervous, and I was talking to a friend, and I was so afraid of the podcast not being perfect or the highest quality, or I was very nervous in the first episode. We recorded the first episode twice, guys.
I was about to say, we recorded it twice.
So what you have on stream platforms is the second try of it. So I was so nervous, and I was like, hey, what if it's not great? I think this is, I do sound very nervous, and we did record it twice, and what are people going to think? What if they make fun of me? And she said, she's actually, shout out if you're listening to this, she's my neighbor. She said, first of all, I'm going to listen always. So we will always have one listener, which is my neighbor. So that was the sweet thing.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I know. And then she said, like, do you know how many things I have not started because I've been so afraid? How many projects, how many ideas. And I think we just need to go for it. And like you said, we can always go back, and weekly we go back to the podcast and change stuff and try new stuff, and it's fine. You can change it, but if you wait, I don't think there's ever like the perfect time. Like we mentioned, I think in like the last episode, just the two of us, about becoming a mom. I think you're never ready. Stuff like that. Like it's never going to be the perfect time, and life is passing by. So let's just do something about it. But yeah, coming back to the question, I think, perfectionism is so toxic. Personally, to me, it's been a struggle in the past, forever, but it's been a struggle for the past like 3 weeks. It's been a little bit alarming, but I think just perfection, first of all, it doesn't exist, guys. So I think we chase it like a drug, like an addiction, because we really want it. We want to achieve it, but it's just not possible. So the constant need for perfection can come from so many factors. I think, hey, I do love my family, I love my friends, but I think maybe it's how sometimes our parents, teachers, or even siblings like pushed us, There's a thin line between encouraging growth and setting nearly impossible expectations. And when we grow up, this often leaves us feeling perpetually unsatisfied because those expectations were never realistic to begin with. So, and social media, which we've discussed before in past episodes, it just only adds fuel to the fire. We live in a world where our faces, our bodies, lives, relationships, everything is expected to look perfect, or we're expected to be like happy all the time. And even though we know, like, it's, of course, we're not going to post like us crying. I mean, people do, but
people do.
Respect. But I mean, of course, we're sharing on socials our happiest moments. I get it. But even though we know it, we still compare ourselves to that happy post, and we're like, oh, I am sad right now, and why can I have that, right? And we're just endlessly scrolling through it all. I recently, and I called Grace the day after this. I recently had a really bad night, and I was scrolling through TikTok, and I saw a video that touched on what I was struggling with, and after that, every single video in my feed seemed to reflect the same thing, and it was this endless stream of negativity, and I couldn't help but think, oh, I'm not achieving this ideal, or so then something bad must happen because I'm not perfect and I'm not doing this right. And it's just such a vicious cycle, and it's just a reminder to all of us that perfection isn't the goal, progress is. And it sounds cliche, but we really do need to trust the process, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're right with the social media bit, because I think that's obviously a new phenomenon for our generation. 20 years ago, people were struggling with different ways of comparing each other to one another.
Yeah.
And now it's like so in your face every single day on your phone. Like you just have your phone in your hand 24/7. And, most people are on some type of social media platform, and it can be really addicting to being perfect can be almost addicting in a sense. It can be like people are striving for something, as we just both mentioned, on striving for something that isn't realistic. And it's really understanding that the people you're watching, you might be watching their lives on social media, but they're not showing you everything. No one's perfect.
Exactly.
Even if their social media is, like the Kardashians, like I bet they live a lavish life, and they show online that they're going to all these events, but I don't even follow them, but like they probably go to all these events and they have like this probably gorgeous homes and all this stuff, but their life isn't perfect either. And it's not, you shouldn't strive to have someone else's life. You need to just focus on your own.
Which actually, this question is not scripted, but now that you mention it, I think it might be very different from generation to generation. For example, my parents are 60 plus, and they don't have social media. They don't know how to do it, and they are not interested in. So I think they might not even get it. They might face like this perfectionism issue in different ways, perhaps more from parents or like their generation, but this pressure that social media adds, I'm not complaining, I'm not saying we have it we don't have it easier either, but it's just that we do have this unspoken pressure on us, because this, like you said, is just a phenomenon, and it's constantly we're being bombarded by everything everywhere, like billboards, the TV, our laptops, the screens, basically. It's insane.
Yeah, definitely. And not to get like super depressing, but it can lead to depression. And I think that is a big reason why like childhood depression has upticked, because these poor kids are having to compare themselves to very unrealistic standards. And kind of rolling into our next question, I think it can definitely affect like your mental health, your personal relationships, and then of course your careers as well. Do you want to take this one first, pal?
Yeah, I think personally, like I mentioned, perfectionism has been both a curse and a blessing. Lately, it's felt more like a curse, but it's made me, like, to be completely honest with you guys, it's made me more insecure, self-conscious, and overall nervous for the past month. And I found myself comparing myself to everyone around me, especially those who seem to have everything I feel I don't. And not necessarily, I'm not talking about like cars or like a house. I'm talking about like literally like those who are like prettier or more confident or cool, or they dress very well, And I've let my mind spiral into the darkest thoughts, and I don't like where it's taking me, to be honest. And it's even like it started affecting my health. I've been in a super bad mood, running on empty. I'm feeling extra sensitive. I've been crying over the smallest thing, picking fights, and just feeling out of balance. And I got to the point where in a room full of people, I was out, and I was completely disconnected. I zone out, and I was constantly comparing myself to everyone around me. And it was alarming because, I mean, the power of the mind is insane, really. But I was really out, pal, and having a good time. I was supposed to be distracted because I was like talking and there was music and I was even drinking. And then I was just like disconnected. And I was like, started to thinking about everything that I am not, everything that I lack of, all my flaws. It's been insane. So, but I've been working through this in therapy. I highly recommend you, if you have the privilege, because unfortunately it's not a right. Not everyone can afford therapy, but it's been helping me a lot. It's been a lifesaver. And while it's been helpful, it's also been painful, because confronting our own demons and flaws is never easy. And one of mine, without a doubt, is perfectionism. And in therapy, and I think this is normal, but my therapist is so good. She's moving these sometimes uncomfortable pieces for me that I, of course, throughout the week while I meet her again, I'm like, oh my God, you moved my whole world and now I cannot stop thinking and what am I supposed to do? But yeah, it's been helping a lot though.
I think that's so real though, and I assume other people experience that also because I definitely have, where you're out like a club or a bar with your girlfriends or whatever, and you kind of just like zone out and start thinking about all your problems, and you just kind of have to be like, whoa, I'm out here to have a good night. Like, let's not let that ruin it. Yeah, I liked this question because I do think, perfectionism is one of those things that it almost sounds like a strength, but I think it can actually be like a huge roadblock, especially when it comes to mental health, relationships, and career. Like first, for mental health, perfectionism keeps us in this constant loop of stress and anxiety and burnout. And when the bar is set so impossibly high, even our wins don't feel like enough. And over time, it chips away at our confidence and makes it hard to actually enjoy your success, which I think then bleeds into your personal relationships. Perfectionism can make us hold others to unrealistic standards, or even worse, keep us from showing up as our real selves. And if you feel like you can't be just yourself, no one's perfect, but if you feel like you're faking it, that can be so toxic for your mental health, your relationships, your career, everything. It all just ties into one giant ball. I think these two things are so closely knit because if your mental health isn't great, then your relationships aren't going to be great, and then your career isn't going to be great. So it's almost like a domino effect. And I think specifically in careers, yes, perfectionism can sometimes drive ambition, but it can also slow you down. And I think the fear of failure can lead to procrastinating and overworking and over delegating. It like stifles creativity and risk taking, which is definitely something that I think I've seen in my life and something that I've had to talk my way out of. And of course, I know this is all easier said than done not to do. Yeah. And everything I've touched on, I've definitely struggled with in my own past, but I think it's all about the way that you talk to yourself. Because as we said, on social media, it's in your face all the time. But if you just remind yourself that is not real life, if you really sit yourself down, have a moment, sit yourself down on the couch and just talk to yourself, literally. Yeah. And if you need to have an intervention for yourself, that's more than fine. But I really think it's about how you process what is around you and how you say that back to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something about not being enough and just, celebrating everything that you do, no matter how like big or small. So how do you think we can shift our mindset from all or nothing to celebrating small wins?
Yeah, I like this question. I think that all or nothing mindset is a really tough one to break. It can trick us into thinking that if something isn't perfect or finished, it doesn't count. But the truth is, like, big wins are just a series of small wins stacked on top of each other. And I think that's something that we've spoken about in previous conversations as well. And I like this question a lot because I think it's something that I struggle with when running my company. But I've kind of written down 3 little points that I really quickly want to touch on that I think I've tried to work on the past year in Graceful Media. And that first one is kind of redefining success. Instead of like seeing success as some huge final outcome, start with recognizing progress as a win in itself. As an example of me putting out my website, that was a huge win. Obviously that didn't get me a client in an hour, but that was a huge win for me just to check it off my to-do list. And that's progress. I took that small step forward and that counts. That is something that I definitely celebrated and continue to celebrate as every time I redo it. But secondly, kind of rewire how we track progress. A lot of us focus on like what's left to do instead of what we've already accomplished. And I've really tried to flip that. At the end of the day, instead of stressing over what's unfinished, I take a second to acknowledge what I did get done that day. It shift the focus from, oh, I didn't do enough to, oh, look how much I did today, or look how far I've come. And I think the final one I really quickly want to touch on is kind of embracing imperfectionism. The complete opposite of it is what we're talking about on this podcast, but not everything has to be 100% valuable. Sometimes, done is better than perfect, and learning to appreciate the process, not just the outcome, can really help us stay motivated and actually enjoy the journey, which is the beautiful part of life. At the end of the day, small wins aren't really small at all. That's kind of what the small wins are, what makes us us.
Yeah.
The outcome happens once, but all the small wins happen over and over and over again. And that's what gets you through the day. And I think those are something that you should start to track and enjoy.
Wow, I loved your answer, Pearl. And this makes me think about something my therapist said, actually. If she's listening to me, thank you. I don't know.
I hope she listens. Hi.
Yeah, I hope she listens. But no, she mentions how sometimes when we're doing something, no matter what, just sometimes, listen me out, guys. There's no goal sometimes. Sometimes you can just go in and explore the idea, explore the situation. If you don't finish the task, if you did not achieve what you thought you were going to achieve, it's fine. Sometimes you just need to go in and try and enjoy it.
Exactly.
And if you didn't like it, that's fine.
That's
fine.
If
you liked it, amazing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, one of the most helpful things has been saying out loud the positive aspects of who I am. I don't do that often, actually. I don't think I've ever done it before. But whenever I find myself consumed by the idea of perfectionism, I first stop and say out loud, like, hey, I am X, Y, and Z. I even wrote it in a notebook I keep.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really cute. Yeah.
This is one of my...
That's a great one.
Therapy. I think I'm talking about a lot about my therapist, but this is a new therapist. So I'm very happy, and is a practice that has helped me realize that I may not be perfect, but I am still. And I cried saying this last week, and I said, like, I am a good deal. Like, after all, I am a good deal.
Yeah.
I am a great person, and that's something I need to remind myself of every day. I just need to believe it, you know? And I also have the power to remove myself from toxic situations, even the ones I create within myself when I am not being kind to myself because I am not achieving perfection. So yeah, I need to just mention, like, hey, okay, I'm not perfect. I am not achieving perfection, but I am still doing good, right? And another thing that helps me is when I think of, you know, that video where it zooms out and it shows like the entire galaxy and the universe, and we're just this tiny dot in the universe. It really puts things into perspective for me, and I remind myself that this is a one-way ticket, and as dark as things have gotten for me lately, perhaps, I still love my life. I like my people. I like my lifestyle, so no doubt. But it's just this chapter, perhaps, that is this challenge I am currently overcoming, but it's so worth it, and because I honestly don't know what else I could complain about. So I'm looking forward to overcoming this and continuing to live this amazing life and give some grace to myself because, yeah, I'm not perfect. And hence, the things I do are not going to be perfect either. And that's absolutely okay. But, yeah, I just remind myself, well, I'm just a tiny dot. I'm doing my best. It's fine. It's fine. Nothing is going to happen if I don't achieve perfection in this task or within myself as a person even. So I just breathe out and I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. 2 points that you just touched on. One, first of all, I love space. I really want to have an astronaut on this podcast because I think it's crazy. I have a what's it called? A skylight in my bedroom, right above the bed. And it's like, it's made me think so many deep thoughts because I'll be laying there in bed, I'll be staring up at the sky and I'm like, wow, like I wonder who's out there? Like, are we in someone's snow globe sitting on their desk? You know, like, literally. And my boyfriend and I were having this conversation, literally just in bed, looking up at the skylight the other day. And it was like, is there actually an end to the universe? Or does it just keep going? Like, what does infinity mean? Okay, I'm going to go on a rampage. But I really want to have someone on the podcast that can talk to all this because I think it's like super fascinating. And I know that really is not about perfectionism in itself, but I just love the concept. And yes, if there's any astronauts out there, please reach out. The second note I want to touch on that you touched on really quickly in your answer to that question was kind of like looking yourself in the mirror and understanding that you're a great deal. And I think that is something that I've also really gotten myself into that mindset. Like, you know what? Like, I am a whole package. Okay. Exactly. You have like, my boyfriend makes fun of me because before we go out, sometimes every time, oh, you know, I'll be getting ready, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, I'll check myself out in that mirror. Like, you just gotta look at yourself and be like, at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter what your partner thinks. It just thinks, or anyone else at the bar or whatever. It matters what you think of yourself.
Preach, pal. Preach.
So you know what? Go stand in front of that mirror and check yourself out. I think that's more than fine.
I need to do that often. I don't do that.
Oh, I do it too much, actually. Maybe it's a little...
Maybe we need to meet in the middle. Like,
there's a level, yeah.
No, but I love that, pal. Absolutely. Okay, so loving our answers. This has been such a wonderful episode, but I think we can end by asking ourselves, how can we support others who struggle with perfectionism?
Yeah, I had a pretty short answer to this one. I think, well, first of all, if anyone has any thoughts out there, I'm all ears because I'm definitely still working through it myself. But I think just being honest that you're struggling with it can be huge. And that's kind of what we're doing on this podcast right now. I think people can feel really alone and like they're almost crazy for having those thoughts and thinking this way. So kind of like almost standing in solidarity with the perfectionist. I think that's my biggest advice.
I mean, for me, hey, like Ray said, if you know the secret, please let me know so I can share it with everyone. No, I think if I can give any advice on this, I mean, I'm still navigating this situation, but I guess if I could change like bodies for a moment, I might be able to share more clearly what I need. But one thing I do know is we need to actively listen. Sometimes we just need to let it out. And by doing so, we start figuring out simply by speaking up. So be an active listener and be kind, because perfectionism is no joke. So, and it's downright mean. So perfectionism, yeah, is mean, period. I think 2 weeks ago, I sent Grace a voice note of like 7 minutes of me just yapping and being like, you know what, this is what I think, but I'm not sure. But you know what, I actually think, and that helped me. Like right after I sent those 7 minutes, I was like, okay, now I regret it because now I feel better.
No,
just please don't listen
I love
to that.
the yaps.
Yeah, no, but I it was insane. Like I didn't do it to feel better. I did it because I needed to like speak up and share what I was feeling and thinking. I was drowning in anxiety, and right after, I swear, I clicked send, and I was like, wow, I feel way better, and she has not even responded. And then of course you responded, and I felt even way better, right? But yeah, and again, I think, yeah, we do need to meet halfway, because perfectionism, yeah, it might push you to achieve great things. Like I've seen with artists who are like perfectionists, like they create amazing performances, songs, film, whatever. But in the meantime, they've gone through so much pain. And don't get me wrong, perfectionism isn't the same as hard work. It's not the same. You can be the hardest worker, the most passionate, with all this knowledge in the world, super detail oriented, but still be able to celebrate all your wins. Be kind to yourself and prioritize your mental health. We need to ensure we're achieving greatness and enjoying it and celebrating it. And yeah, for ourselves. This ride is not always pretty. And I know that to achieve greatness, we have to sacrifice some things. I totally agree, fair. But I believe we can change the balance a bit so it's not like 90% suffering and 10% joy. So listen to your friend, your relative, your partner, be kind to them, because they are probably being really hard on themselves because of being perfectionists. Help them see that they're doing great, and we need to learn how to be patient with ourselves too, and trust the process, because Rome was definitely not built in a day. Okay.
Snaps.
Jeez.
Way to end it. Nat's like, mic drop. It's like that Obama meme where he's like,
yeah,
you know.
Absolutely.
No, I think that was great. Yeah, I really think the biggest takeaway is look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you are gorgeous, smart, intelligent. You are the full package, and anyone would be lucky to have you in that. And that's in personal relationships and career.
Exactly. So. Exactly. You don't need to be perfect, and you can still aim to achieve greatness. That's still good.
Yeah. I don't think perfectionism is the same as striving to do amazing things. I think perfectionism can almost hold you back sometimes from striving to do amazing things. So
exactly. It's fine to improve, go back, change things. It's good.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Definitely. And if anyone has any other thoughts on how we can get through or move on from being overly perfectionists, please feel free to comment, because I'm actually very curious what people think about this. Any final thoughts, pal, on this episode?
I'm so grateful for this conversation. I think it's going to be so helpful for everyone. We cannot wait to hear your stories. And thank you for this wonderful space, pal.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone who tuned in. These conversations really do matter. And as we wrap up our 10th episode, we are so grateful to have a community that's really open to discussing these real life challenges that women face in the workplace and beyond. So I feel really blessed, and I'm excited to move on to episode 11, which is coming next week. So don't miss our next week's interview. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok at Goal Getter Podcast for updates and great content. And don't forget to tune in. We have weekly episodes you definitely will not want to miss. So see you next week.